My name is Rabbi Chaim Bruk. I'm a rabbi here in Bozeman, and I'm going to spend a few minutes with you guys today to share with you a perspective about the Holy Land of Israel and modern-day events. Abraham and Sarah, the first Jewish couple who lived over 4,000 years ago, were the first Jews to be told by God to enter this Holy Land of Israel and walk it in the length and the breadth. And that continued for millennia. That Jewish people, Abraham and Sarah's descendants, starting with Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and his wife Leah, lived in the Holy Land. The city of Hebron, is where the patriarchs and matriarchs of Judaism are buried, a piece of land purchased in cash by Abraham when his wife Sarah needed a burial place. The 12 tribes of Israel lived there. Joshua led the Jewish people after the Exodus from Egypt into the Holy Land. It continued through the era of the judges, the era of Samson, the era of Samuel, the son, the prophet, the son of Hannah, when she prayed at the Shiloh tabernacle in Samaria. It continued later when King David purchased the Temple Mount from a fellow named Aravna the Jebusite, and eventually made that land, that piece of land, a place that would be the center of Jewish life with the Holy Temple. The first temple was built by King Solomon. Maybe you heard of him, the wisest man to ever live. And that temple stood for 410 years at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and Jews flocked from all over the world, and many non-Jews flocked from all over the world to serve their Creator at this incredible holy place. Later, the second temple, rebuilt by Ezra and Nehemiah, stood for 420 years on the Temple Mount. And this continued generation after generation. Jewish people always, for the last 4,000 years, had a connection and a relationship and a dwelling in the Holy Land. My own grandmother, my father's mother, was born in Jerusalem in the 1920s, way before the modern state of Israel came to be. Her grandparents lived in Jerusalem. So while some of my grandparents lived in Eastern Europe, I have many, many generations personally of family that lived in the Holy Land. So if that's the case, how come people still claim that the Jews may not be the righteous dwellers in the Holy Land? It's a complicated answer, but I'm going to give you some basic information that I hope will make you want to research even more and at least ask questions, because questions are always good. You don't have to accept everything I say today as it came down from, as if I'm Moses coming down from Sinai. I'm just a rabbi in Bozeman. You can look this up later and you'll find it out for yourself. So questions are good. But the premise of the question needs to always be that the Jewish people have a right to exist, period. They have a right to live, and they have a right to live in their ancient homeland. Sure, you can argue about the details, but our right is inherent all the way back to when God gave the land to Abraham and Sarah. So let me tell you how we ended up where we are today. There was a king named Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king of Babylon, the empire of the time, and he exiled the Jews out of Israel, a majority of them, and destroyed the temple that Solomon had built. So the Jews spent the next 70 years after the exile, they spent it in Babylon, then they spent it under the Median Empire, and then eventually under the Persian Empire. And it was 70 years later, after they were exiled by Nebuchadnezzar, that Ezra and Nehemiah led the Jews back to rebuild the second temple. But Jewish hatred always existed. Jealousy of the Jewish people's spiritual endeavors always was out there. And so the second temple also had a destruction. That was destroyed by the Roman Empire in 69 CE, 420 years after the second temple was rebuilt on the Temple Mount. And the Jews went from exile to exile, from here to there. We were cast around from place to place, but our connection to the Holy Land was always there. The sages of Israel, even during the time of exile, even during the time of destruction, they always brought the great Jewish wisdom of the Talmud, of the Mishnah. Studying the ancient books of Judaism was always going on in the Holy Land. The great Rabbi Judah Halevi was a Spanish Jewish rabbi who said I believe it was the 12th century, he said, Libi b'Mizrach, my heart is in the east, even though I'm at the edge of the west, meaning he was living in Spain, but his heart was in the Holy Land. Jewish people always yearned for Jerusalem. Every Passover Seder, when the Jewish people gathered to commemorate the Exodus from Egypt, Jews all across the world, at the end of our Passover Seder, the last thing that we say is L'Shana Haba B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Because when we left Egypt, the goal was to go to Jerusalem, and that goal has never changed even when we've been exiled. So whether it was the Byzantine Empire or the Ottoman Empire, whether it was the Babylonians, the Crusaders, or the Romans, or the Greeks, or pick your name of the anti-Semite of the day who didn't like having Jews in the Holy Land, we never stopped yearning and dreaming of always coming back to rejoin our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land. Muslims have always traditionally prayed to Mecca, which is in Saudi Arabia. Christians always keep Bethlehem and Nazareth in their mind because it's connected to their Redeemer, to their Savior. The Jewish people have always, until this very day here, right here in this synagogue in Bozeman, we pray and we face Jerusalem because that's where we want our prayers to go up to heaven through the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, even when we're in exile. The UN didn't give us Israel. The Balfour Declaration didn't give us Israel. The EU and the United States didn't give us Israel. The Jewish people's connection to Israel predates all of these empires, all of these ideas. And so there will never be a reality where the Jewish people will stop being connected to its ancient homeland. What we saw a couple weeks ago, the barbarism and the brutality that so many Jewish people suffered, has not been seen by the Jewish people since the Holocaust some 80 years ago. I myself, I know it's hard to believe that, but I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, with my maternal grandfather, Rabbi Shimon Goldman, who was just a butcher. He had a butcher shop, but he had 6 brothers and sisters and parents that were all slaughtered by the Nazis. They were murdered by the Nazis in Poland for the crime of being Jewish. And he managed, by God's incredible miracles, to make it through Russia, to Japan, to China, San Francisco, and eventually to the East Coast, and start a family. Married my grandmother, Esther. They had 4 children. I'm his grandson. So the Holocaust isn't a foreign entity to me. And so when I wake up in the morning on a Jewish holiday and I hear that 1,400 of my brothers and sisters were tortured and killed just for the fact that they are Jewish, it's never excusable. It's never excusable, and there will never be any logic that you can tell me that will make that okay, because terrorism and barbarism and brutality is against everything I believe as a Jew, because as a Jew, we are trained from birth to believe that every human being is created in the image of God. So I treat every person, Arab, Jew, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, it makes no difference, atheist, I treat every human being the way I would want to be treated. As our Talmud says, that which you hate being done to you, don't ever do to another. So the Jewish people are broken right now. We're mourning. Of course we are. We're a small family. We're, 15 million Jews in the world. Little fraction of humanity, tiny fraction. Here in Montana, we're less than 1% of the population. So when you lose that amount of people, it's a big deal. It's the equivalent of losing 40,000 people in America. Imagine if 40,000 Americans were killed by a terror group. That's what it feels like to be a Jew today. So we are broken and we are mourning, but we are not down and done with. Jewish people never are. We are resilient. We will survive. We will thrive, and we will continue doing our very best to be a beacon of light to the world. And from Jerusalem, light will emanate to the rest of the world. Because the Jewish people can't afford to lose this battle against evil. We have no other option. If we lose, it means the Jewish people will cease to exist, and that is never going to be an option. So what can you do? You live somewhere in Montana, you live in Lewistown, you live in Havre, Sydney, Glendive, Bozeman, Livingston. What can you do to help the situation? There's a few things. Number 1, pray. The Jewish people need all the prayers we can get. Pray for the welfare of Jerusalem. I pray for Jerusalem, and we want you to pray for Jerusalem, because every prayer we can get for the Jewish people, both in Israel and abroad, helps the spiritual energetics of our people to continue thriving and surviving. Number 2, be kind. Be charitable. If you have a little charity box in your house, and if you don't, create one. Ask your parents if every day they can give you a nickel, a penny, a dime, a quarter, and put it in the charity box. And that box will go to something good, helping a homeless person, a poor person. Maybe even if you want to donate it to the people of Israel, I can help you get that. But do something good, something tangible, because those acts of kindness and goodness reverberate across the world and has a domino effect to make the world a great place. And number 3, if you know a Jew, reach out to them. They probably can use a big hug. They could probably use a healthy dose of friendship and support right now. Many Jews feel very alone. And if you don't know a Jew, come to our website, jewishmontana.com, send an email to the Jewish community, and I will read it to the Jewish community. I will announce it to the Jewish community that a student in a school in whatever town across Montana sent this beautiful note and wanted me to read it to the Jewish community, their love and support for the Jewish people. Jewish people have been through a lot. I never expected in my lifetime that I would see what I saw 3 weeks ago. I never did see that before, and I hope I never see it again. I'm truly inspired by how many Montanans have come together to show support for the Jewish community. It really is an uplifting thing, and I really do hope that our world sees no more war, no more animosity, no more hunger and homelessness, no more fighting and killing. A world of peace, a utopian peace that we all wait for, the coming of the Messiah, when the world will be a place of peace and tranquility and love for other human beings, where we'll start treating each other, all of us, as human beings created in the image of God. And boy, that can't come soon enough. Thank you for listening. And if you ever have any questions, I love questions. Rabbi@jewishmontana.com. I'll answer every email from every student, from every teacher, from every principal. That's what I'm here for. God bless you, and thanks for watching.
This has been a presentation of the Montana Office of Public Instruction, putting Montana students first.